as a lot, not just as a lower third, but I use them as.
Hello, Sports Scope followers. After 5 years of doing this program once a week, balancing a 60-hour work week job, I've decided to do the program 5 days a week, 1 hour a night, taking a significant pay cut. So I've started a Patreon page, which is Patreon, Patreon/SportsScope, spelled the same way at the bottom of the screen you see there, for $5 a month, 17 cents a day. You can help support the program. You ask yourself, why Sports Scope? Well, I bring in such big names such as Al Borges, former Auburn offensive coordinator, and I cover the big news in sports that the corporate media will not cover. If you want to contribute more than $5 a month, you can go use the Cash App. The cash tag is Sports Scope, again spelled the same way, or you can go to the Zelle app, sportscope@gmail.com. SportsScope has about 5,000 followers and growing. If you want to advertise on the program, you can email me. The word is SportsScope, spelled the same way again, at gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the program. Okay, I'm here live now. Sorry for the delay. Had some technical issues. Very frustrating, but we're going to get the show on the road anyways. Going to talk about, obviously, week one, Aaron Rodgers, not to panic about that situation with the Packers, and a little bit of I told you so with the Kansas City Chiefs and the way they played. It is a team game, guys. It's a team game, and it's not about one receiver, one quarterback, and for that nature. But mainly, and we're going to get into the Dak Prescott things. I know that was like the biggest story today, this Dak Prescott injury. But here's some good and bad. See, what I got to do, guys, is I just tell the good and the bad and the ugly, call it like I see it, balls and strikes, backed up by big data, examples, everything of that nature. Hair a little jacked up. I got really irritated. I had some kind of technical issue on my screen, and it kept showing my banner in front of the so you couldn't see my face or anything what I was trying to talk about. But here's some examples of teams that have lost the first game of the season and not just made the playoffs, went on to win the Super Bowl. The Giants in 2007, first team since 1999 to do so. Before that, the Broncos won after the 98 season when they lost the start of their 98-99 game. Very good team. Remember, that was a back-to-back Super Bowl team. But here's some really good teams that you all may remember here recently. The Green Bay Packers in 2010, they were by far the best team down the stretch defensively. Had a lot of injuries that year. Went on to win the Super Bowl. This is one of the most impressive one, though. The 2009 New Orleans Saints lost their opening game to then the Washington Redskins. And if any of you recall, about 90% of the season that year, that was the year that Drew Brees was having 4 and 5 yard touchdown games, completely blowing people out at home. That's why the AFC Championship game was there. They got the 1 seed that year. Now, it was some questionable calls. That was the Bounty Gate type of thing that came up with the Greg Williams, I want to say, the defensive coordinator. But that team was great. They wasn't good. They were great. They went on to win the Super Bowl that year in 2009. 2008, Pittsburgh Steelers were lost on a Sunday night game to the Denver Broncos. Just last year, the Tennessee Titans lost their opener, like they did this year, to the Arizona Cardinals. Titans got the 1 seed in the playoffs. Green Bay, if you don't recall, lost in Jacksonville a game to the Saints. The Saints weren't even playing in New Orleans. They beat the brakes off the Packers. I want to say it was like 35-7 in that game. Packers went on to have a 1 seed. Now, they didn't win the Super Bowl. Unlike those, I'm going to say it was a 2011 Giants as well. Another team that simply lost their opener, went on to win the Super Bowl. Not just get there, win the whole thing. And if you want to go way back, by the way, I'm working on getting Jim Jeffcoat, former Dallas Cowboy, on this team. 1993, they lost their first 2 games because of the Emmitt Smith contract holdout. He comes back. They go on to win the Super Bowl in fashion that year. So for all of you that are worried about it, now, when there's a good, there's a bad. Don't read too much into opening wins in the regular season. There's been teams that win their opening games in the regular season and go on and get the number 1 pick, which means they had the worst record in the league when winning their game in convincingly fashion. I want to say the 2015, if you guys don't recall, the 2015 Tennessee Titans, in September of that year, there was a big argument. Who's better, Marcus Mariota, the second pick, or Jameis Winston, the first pick? Now, we know the answer to that question now. It was Jameis Winston. He went number 1 overall. But then they beat them like 45 to 14 or some crap. And it was in Tampa. It went down, and that team went on to win in Tampa. By the way, I like the Broncos tonight, just to win on the money line. I'm not sure about covering. Maybe Seattle will play over their head and play really well, only to get the number 1 pick next year. So, yeah, so the Tennessee Titans got the number 1 pick that year and traded it down, got a whole lot of picks out of it. And Jacksonville, the year that the 2020 season, they opened up against, ironically, the Indianapolis Colts, and that was part of their winning streak. They won that opening game, only to lose the rest of the games that season and got Trevor Lawrence. And, of course, he's a player they got right now. So you can't really look at opening day and put too much stock in it. I know we all want to. Now, I will say this. Different situation in Dallas. Totally different situation in Dallas. You know, you got your starting quarterback. Now, they're saying 6 to 8 weeks with Dak Prescott being out. Now, of course, we've got this backup here, Cooper Rush here. And, I think about this team, and I think about the fact that Prescott's going to be out these weeks. And you know what? The defense played like I said they would probably play. The defense, they said the way they got a lot of hits on Brady. Brady threw an interception. They got some sacks in there, but it was the lowest score since the 89 team, guys. 3 points in that particular game. Now, mind you, this team did lose Cedric Wilson, Amari Cooper, and who was the other one? Of course, they're one of the wide receivers. He's still going to be out. He's still going to be out a few more weeks. But as I said before, I'm not backing away from anything I said and not trying to make it look like I didn't originally say it. Yeah, I had Dallas winning the division, and because I'm not that big a believer in wide receivers, and I do believe the fact that they did they have drafted well in that category. Now, that was before this injury came down, right? But you know what the real issue is? Yeah, Michael Gallup. The real issue is the fact that they are paying, and I said this 3 years ago when he held out during training camp. It was right around when they were putting on, the news came about right at the first of the, he was like in Mexico or something, right? 2 or 3 years ago. I want to say it was 3 years ago. And Jerry Jones, hopefully I get Jim Jeffcoat to clarify some things. He said that Steven's running the day-to-day operation. Jerry gets final say, but he listens to Stephen Jones. I want to get him to clarify that. He said that on the Mac and Jack and Jim show to me on Sunday. and hopefully he's going to be able to come on tomorrow. But they're paying him $18 million. You know, he is the highest paid running back, and you had 2 carries more than Pollard. And that's your biggest problem in Dallas, is overplaying for players who are subpar on their way down. They sell a lot of tickets. Jerry likes these players. You know, Jaden, I forgot the guy's first name, but he's a linebacker that they took out of Notre Dame. The linebacker they took out of Notre Dame overpaid him. Now, this guy got hurt in the bowl game. He works his way back. Really good story, but his play was not really at elite level. Gave him a ton of money, and then they later on had to cut the guy. He's not even in the league, I want to say, Jaden Smith or whatever. But it's contracts like that that's really hurting this team. Because the reason why I say that is you look at the injuries last year to a team like Baltimore. By the way, they've got a cornerback out right now, Fuller. He's tore his ACL. They're going to be fine because they built their team the right way. And yes, have they slightly overpaid Dak Prescott from the get-go? Absolutely. They have absolutely overpaid. But it's those contracts, the Zeke Elliott contract, $20 million, and then they had to turn around and trade Amari Cooper. Paid $20 million to Amari Cooper. Then they turned around and had to trade him when they're drafting really well. They traded for him. Then they traded him away. The $20 million. Plus this guy got honing off, injured all year last year. So you start getting that dead money compiles like snow on the ground. It piles and piles and piles. And then you're in a bad situation. You're in a bad situation. Now, some people are talking about Stephen A. Smith had an idiotic comment saying, we'll bring in on First Take. He said, we'll go and bring in Colin Kaepernick. You got to overturn every rock. And then Michael Irvin said, this guy ain't played 5 years. Oh, are you kidding me? No, you can't do that. And then they started talking about this Cooper Rush guy. And he's been a backup with this team for a while. They're going to have to do some power running. Their chances are slim to none to even get to the playoffs in this division. I would say maybe go to a power running game. You may want to cut a special teams guy and maybe bring in a Cam Newton. Now, not to be a starter, but a situational player. You're going to have to, air quote, manufacture some offense, okay? If I'm McCartney, the head coach there, I'm overturning every kind of option to manufacture some points here. McCarthy's supposed to be an offensive guy. You bring in maybe a Cam Newton on a goal line situation, bring him in on some type of college type of, and tell him that's what you're going to do. That's what Carolina did, and they beat Arizona last year when they were really hot. They beat Arizona really good because their defense is fair. Their defense is pretty good. They're as good as I thought they would be actually this year. Michael Parsons playing like a young Lawrence Taylor. I think somebody said that today. I wouldn't go that far, but he's very close to play. They can use this guy all over the place. You still got Lawrence there on the other side and the pass rusher there. I said that Randy Gregory was a little bit of an overrated player. Didn't play a lot anyways. He was suspended most of his career when he wasn't hurt for PED use. So I would use something like that. Bring in Cam Newton. It's after week 1. He'll have a non-guaranteed contract. Now, people say, what about Jimmy Garoppolo? Thoughts. Jimmy Garoppolo in this new contract, a reporter out of Dallas said, well, he's got a no-trade clause. Garoppolo's got a no-trade clause. Only way I would even consider trading for Garoppolo if you decide with this thumb injury, which now my last report I read, he could come back before the Bears game, before their bye week in week 6. And they would have a snowman's chance of doing something then. But, Cam, and look, Pickle says Cam would be perfect for Dallas. Say, I would tell him right off the bat, we're bringing you in for situational football. We're still going to do a 2-quarterback system. We're going to try to manufacture as much offense as we can. And we're going to do a power running team. We're going to play field position. And those are some winnable games. I think you got a Detroit in there. You have some divisional play in there in the next 6 games. Now you'll probably lose to Cincinnati, which I'll talk about Joe Burrow here in a minute, but it's not the end of the world. Okay, it's likely the end of the world. It's very likely that this season's shot. But if you're 1 game in, you've got that defense. There's some things that I would try. You're not all 0-4, 0-5. You're not playing Buffalo, then the Rams, but they do have the Rams during this stretch. But you're not playing a murder's row like an AFC West, anything like that nature. You have to run option. Yeah, Pickle says run option. Bill Belichick done that. He done that with Jacoby Brissett when he was a Patriot. When I think Brady was suspended and then Garoppolo got hurt, he was running some crazy run option stuff. Do that, play the field position, tighten up on defense, give Pollard the ball more than Ezekiel Elliott, use Ezekiel Elliott in short yardage situations, stuff like that. Now, what's the other parts of this? Well, the other part is the NFC East now is wide open. You know, it's wide open. I thought Washington would beat Jacksonville would beat Washington. They didn't, and I was looking at Washington's had some good news here lately. They've had some good. Make sure I got my signal thing in here. I got a little problem come up on there. Washington came out pretty good. Wentz didn't do too bad. 4 touchdowns. Now, he did throw an interception, got a couple sacks. But, you know, he did much better than I thought he would do. He had a 101-point quarterback rating. Only sacked once, 2 picks. Now, Curtis Samuel was out all year last year. All year. And that was one of their biggest free agent. And he had a great game. Samuel had a great game. You've also got Terry McLaurin on that team. I didn't think Logan Thomas would be back in this particular game. And he has came back. So that's your tight end. Now, Chase Young is still out for 4 games. You still got guys like Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat, maybe the best player. Even I know he wasn't drafted as high as Chase Young. He may be the best player in that defense. After watching that game, now, again, like I just said, it's the first week. This team has some life here. You know, they have a good coach with Rivera. Now, my issue is Carson Wentz's his head caseness. You know, maybe he has seen a psychologist and not telling anybody and letting it go public. So there's a lot to be optimistic about if you're a Washington Commanders fan. Now, Philadelphia played about what they thought they would. They won within the margin of error. A few good passes there. Number 1 offensive line, according to Pro Football Focus, coming in. One of the better defensive line, one of the better secondary. Got James Bradbury there. And the Giants went into Nashville here and stole that game. Now, man, they got I was listening to some New York radio stations because I listened to a show out of a show out of New York, a Bernie and Sid show. And Sid Rosenberg used to work with WFAN, probably the most popular local sports talk radio station in America. And he said that he thought it was idiotic for the ball to go for 2 at the end of the game with the minute and something left, because it'd be really hard for them to get the ball back if they missed it. He made a good point there. But mind you, he's looking at a team that he's taken the first game of the first season, a team that basically had a really bad run-in with the former head coach there. Looks like they quit on Joe Judge last year. They're playing against a team that had the 1 seed. They're on the road. They're here in Nashville. He is also catching on, and this is what Ron Rivera said. Ron Rivera used to be the air quote by the book guy, and it started losing him games. Analytics by the book. If it's this score, you go for 1. If it's that score, you go for 2. When do you go for it on 4th down? etc., etc., etc. And then he started losing games. He was on the verge of getting fired. So he calls John Madden, the late great John Madden. This is early in his career at Carolina. And Madden says, well, you need to throw that book away. All right. You need to analyze each game. Each game has its own identity. You don't know how bad a team is. You may see a soft spot in the defense. You may have injuries. They may have injuries. You just don't know. Then Ron Rivera, he said, you need to listen to your gut and play each game as that is a different game. Coach each game as it is a different game. I went back and looked at the box score of this Tennessee Titans-Giants game, and they ran for over 200 yards on Tennessee. And a lot of that, they were beating Tennessee to the edge. Tennessee defense was not sealing the edge in that game all game long. 25 yards from Daniel Jones, 168. Was it 180 Pickles? It was Barkley. Saquon Barkley had a huge game in that game. So I know they had over 200 total rushing yards. Barkley had a great game there. They're getting beat to the outside. So that's what he's saying. It was a play fake. And I want to say that Jones ended up running that one in. Then you look at the other side, and I was ready to rip into Ryan Tannehill, and he had a great week. Ryan Tannehill was 20 of 33, 266 yards, 2 touchdowns, what this guy put out. Made some pinpoint throws and a loss for the Titans, got some good pressure with 5 sacks. They ended up with 93 yards. They shut Tennessee's run down, which Tennessee had to replace their best run blocker, Roger Saffold. Dontrell Hiller was a big part of the offense, receiving 2 touchdowns. Robert Woods only had 2 targets. Basically, a whole new team there offensively as far as skill position is concerned. And Tannehill had a pretty good game. They overthought themselves when they called that stupid 3rd and 1 tight end sweep play. They're overthinking the room when you had Derrick Henry there to get that 1 yard, blown a 13-0 lead there, and basically only scored one touchdown in the second half. And the fact that they gave up 200 yards rushing, if you're a Titans fan, that can be corrected. I think this team has some good run defenders. They're going to have to do more to get these receivers involved and be more involved in the offense. Don't overthink it. Don't try. Everybody tries to be Andy Reid. You can only be Andy Reid if you've got Andy Reid's talent around him. You know, that is some Andy Reid crap. You don't try that when the money's online. You got to go with your bread and butter plays when you start getting deep into the second half of a close game. When you start to see a team closing in on you, you probably just need to give that ball to Derrick Henry and let him do his thing. You know, Pickle says Taylor to Juan jump. But as far as that game is concerned, you got to look at it from the whole picture. The Colts and the Jaguars, they tied. Houston, they tied. The Jaguars, what I thought they would win, they lost. So essentially, you got 2 teams that have tied, and you got 2 teams that have lost, and you're just in week 1. As frustrating as that be. Now, next week, if they get the running game, they may have a chance against Buffalo. Buffalo has been told how great they are for about 10 days. They've been told how great they are for 10 days. They're going in another primetime game. They're going home. They may be 8-9 point favorites against Tennessee. Who knows? It's probably going to be a 1 touchdown game plus, my guess is. And Tennessee, they've matched up pretty well against Buffalo the last 2 years. They beat Buffalo. You know, they're going to have to, learn the football and be aggressive. I don't think they're going to win it. They're going to probably go 0-2. But this division, like the NFC East, is going to be wide open. As far as the NFC East, going back to the NFC East, I think the Giants, I had them at 8-9. They won a game I thought they wouldn't win. I had the Eagles at around 10-7. Okay. And then, of course, Washington I had at 6 6 to 7 wins. If Wentz continues to play like that, his ability to get the ball downfield, hit his playmakers, run when he needs to run, and don't try to run into trouble like he has been, literally running into trouble, running into blockers and making foolish plays. Let his defense do their thing. They're legitimately in. This is a 3-team race now instead of just a 2-team race. And the one team is Dallas. The one team I picked to win, it's probably going to finish about 4th. And realistically speaking here, right? So it's wide open. Washington's still in it. Tennessee's in the AFC South still. There was some touchdown passes dropped, a lot of big plays that were simply dropped in the Jacksonville game, going back to that other game with Jacksonville and the Washington football team. Again, teams with number 1 picks end up winning sometimes in week 1. Teams that win the Super Bowl lose on week 1. It's week 1. There's been less and less practice time. There's been less. There's no two-a-days now. Less players playing in the preseason, and that's what you get. And that's what you get. You know, it's never really came back and bit Sean McVay before in the past by not playing any players in the preseason. This year, going back to last Thursday, it probably bit him in the rear end. You know, they're Super Bowl champs. I understand that. They'll probably bounce back, but they look bad, you know. And I know that, and like I said, in Rappaport, this was as late as this afternoon. Dak Prescott's possible return for October 30th versus the Bears after the bye week, or it could go as far as November 13th against the Packers. By the way, the Packers own them, and that's a good transition. Okay. Again, the Packers, they have lost before. Like last year, they had the number 1 seed in the NFC last year, and they lost last year, not this year, last year at Minnesota. Okay? Now, there was a late scratch here. Alan Lazard scratched just before the game started. All right? Marquez Valdez-Scantling, he's with the Kansas City Chiefs now. We know about Adams. Adams had a pretty good game with the Raiders. They lost. They had a good game. Robert Tonyan's first game back, he had a pretty bad injury. I want to say it was an ACL too, back in the Arizona game last year, almost a full year ago, right? David Bakhtiari thought he was going to be back. Not quite ready. Not quite. I know he's going to be back any game now. Elijah Jenkins, the right guard, he's out of that game. So now you're out that many starters against a team who always plays you well at home. And your defense, I don't know what they were doing, not manning up Jair Alexander against Jefferson. Justin Jefferson has a huge game. You did have Alexander back, but they're playing off coverage. Man, they got out coached like nobody's business. They just got ambushed. That game could have been a lot worse. And, of course, even with that happening, Christian Watson, their young rookie, he dropped a wide open pass, and it was a lot of Aaron Jones had 8 touches in that game. So we saw what happened last year. They'll bounce back. Minnesota, I think that they'll come back down to earth a little bit because you got Kirk Cousins on that team. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but we'll see. We'll see, possibly. But Kirk Cousins, like a Ryan Tannehill, and this is what I tell Tennessee Titan fans, both of their salaries are plus $30 million cap hit. Tannehill's like 36. The cap, as of today, is $208 million, okay? Tannehill's is almost 20%. No team in the last 10 years have won the Super Bowl. No NFL team has won the Super Bowl when any one player is over 12.6% of the salary cap. So Minnesota Vikings are not going to win the Super Bowl. This goes back over a decade, and the Minnesota Vikings and the Tennessee Titans definitely ain't going to win it because Tannehill is the highest cap hit in the league. He's the highest cap hit in the league. That's why you got guys like Cal Phillips. You're really dependent on pure rookies. That guy looks promising for Tennessee, but and Dak Prescott. Now his cap number is nowhere near that bad, but it's going to be there. Yeah, they don't win, Corey. They just don't win. When you get over that 12.6%, when you pay a guy and that kind of money, the math don't add up. They don't win. You're depending on rookies. Like I said, that guy Cal Phillips, he dropped that punt. The Giants get it back at a short field. Little stuff like that starts to add up when you're leaning that much on rookie contracts and guys past their prime, 30-plus guys that may play 2 or 3 good games, and then they come up injured. So that's the main reason. Even though Tannehill did have a good game yesterday, he didn't have a $36 million a year cap hit kind of game. He's not a 36-year cap hit kind of guy. Tom Brady has never had the top cap in money, which is a good transition. There was a story about what I thought. Like Dennis Green said, it is what I thought it was. There was a story just before the game started about Tom Brady. And this is from Rappaport. This came out about Sunday morning, about 6 o'clock Central Time. It says Tom Brady's heading into what expected to be his final season. Tom Brady said it's plainly and clearly, I'm a middle-aged dad, and I've got a lot of bleep going on with the S word. He takes a 11-day hiatus right in the middle of training camp. You got a new center, got a new guard on that team. Now, I thought that they still play well, and they did. Their left guard was still there. Their left tackle and right tackle was still there. But the guy leaves on an 11-day hiatus with his family to the Bahamas. And he made a promise, no playbooks, no nothing. This promise was made just before he unretired. This was made, but as soon as he retired, this trip was planned. And he had to tell Todd Bowles, the head coach there. He had to tell management there with the Tampa Bay Bucks. Meanwhile, you got offensive linemen dropping down. They're bringing in new receivers because receivers are getting hurt. Chris Godwin's coming back from an ACL. You got all this turmoil. And like I said before, guys, he's got a void. He has a void, and it seems like he's so famous now and so respected around the league, but I think that he can't quite. He's too good to co-coach. He's too big time to coach, and that's unfortunate. A reason why I say the word he needs to fill that void. He don't know what to do with his time. Pro athletes, particular football players, they have what you call an itinerary. Itinerary is what you get when you go out and fly planes. If you're on a long trip, you get boarding passes. If you have to change planes, that's part of your itinerary. You're supposed to change planes and everything. You're supposed to be at a certain place at a certain time. He's had that itinerary as a pro, guys, for over 20 years. And he enjoys what he's doing. My time preparing for today's program, just like it was last week, went by like that. If I was going to work, doing my day job, doing my other job, doing security, the time would still be 3 o'clock. It would still be 3 o'clock. So that's the thing. He still hasn't fulfilled that void. It was a family trip. They are having problems. This stuff is serious. Jimmy Johnson, who I'm still trying to get on the program, I may ask Jim about him again tomorrow. Jim Jeffcoat's supposed to come on tomorrow, but we're not sure because he has an event to go to. But that first year at Dallas in 1990, well, that cost him his marriage. That's what Jimmy Johnson said. So you do something you love to do. You want to become great at it. It fills a void in your life. You still love your family. You just want to continue to do that and get better and better and better. And his wife probably thought, like most 40-year-olds, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, John Elway, Montana, right at 40, those guys end up retiring. Well, he's 45 now. He's 5 years past the deadline. If he comes back next year, there's going to be a divorce. Now, he won't have a problem finding another woman because he's Tom Brady, but that does a lot to his kids. That takes a toll on the children, and I understand what that's all about. So it is what we thought it was. It was a lot of speculation. There was some reports that maybe they were having problems. Maybe there was some not specifically reported, but the Post was trying to hint at infidelity or something like that. That wasn't the case. That very well may be the case, but I don't think it was. I think this guy, he loves doing what he's going to do. He hasn't found anything to fill that void that football has, even at the age of 45. And Pickle says he may be separated now. That may be true. My guess is he's probably just too much into it, and he's trying to figure it out. My guess is they're probably seeing some kind of counseling or something of that nature. That's my guess. But either way, they won. They got the win, didn't they? And judging by the way that Trey Lance played, I had them in the NFC Championship game against the 49ers. Now I'm leaning maybe maybe go back and lean towards Tampa. But again, it's week 1. That's the worst possible game that Trey Lance could start. It was a monsoon in Chicago. There were puddles there. Let's let this thing play out. But I do think that this team looks good this year. I think if he gets deep in the playoffs, I think he needs to hang it up and find something else to do with his time. He's got a son that's going to be a teenager pretty soon. There's a lot he can do. I don't think he's really given it a full chance yet. I think he's just probably he's one of these people. He has to find something else to do. And I think he will. He's just got to set his mind to it, just like he set his mind to do other things. Okay? All righty then. Whew, that is a mouthful. Speaking of guys that are considered, well, hold on. Okay, let's go to this Joe Burrow thing. Speaking of big-time players, Joe Burrow, quarterback, Cincinnati. It did not even come to mind, guys, that Joe Burrow, the quarterback of Cincinnati, his appendix burst. His appendix burst late in July, just when the camp was starting. And this guy is so tough. He comes back from a really bad reconstructive knee surgery, and they get to the Super Bowl last year. But this past year, his appendix burst, and he was actually out of camp, guys, since August the 18th. Yeah, Joe Burrow was out of camp since August the 18th. And mind you, he has 3 new offensive linemen. No, those were supposed to be upgrades. Those were supposed to be upgrades. And you can tell by watching Sunday's game against Pittsburgh that those were upgrades. But my thing is, he was overconfident. He was overconfident in his new offensive line. This guy hangs on to the football too long. And he gets, I want to say, led by, what's the guy? TJ Watt, who's tore his pec muscle. They get him like 5 times, and he throws like 4 interceptions. Yeah, he threw 7 sacks. Excuse me. They sacked Burrow 7 times. He threw 4 interceptions, and they still went to overtime. Now, the odds of getting that far into the game are slim and none. He was sacked 7 times and threw 4. If you throw 4 interceptions in a game, the chances of you winning is less than 20%. The chances you win is less than 20%. Then you throw in 7 sacks on top of that? And on the flip side, you look at Mitch Trubisky with Pittsburgh in his debut, he had like 1 pick. He had 1 pick in that game, and they still got in overtime. Burrow's timing was just a little bit off. Again, he came into camp like August 18th. That's like less than 2.5, 3 weeks. 2.5, 3 weeks in the camp. Totally overlooked the game. The odds makers made them close to a touchdown favorite at home against Pittsburgh, and they got into overtime. Now, like I said, TJ Watt, Defensive Player of the Year, could be out 6 to 8 weeks if he has surgery. And they haven't, the Steelers haven't made any clarification of this. He could be out the entire season. So that goes back to what I just said. You look at the fact that one team has lost, one team has won. What does it say for the league? The Ravens, you think, man, Ravens, you got Lamar Jackson on a contract year. They won the game. Cincinnati loses. T. Higgins goes out with the concussion. Man, they're in bad shape. No, I don't think so. I think a lot of rust was knocked off in that game, and I think they'll come back. They got to play the Cowboys next week against Cooper Rush, so they should beat the Cowboys. They'll be 1-1, and Pittsburgh's probably going to go the other way. Pittsburgh plays up to their competition, and then they play down their competition. I know Pittsburgh really well. I know Tomlin. That's how they're good. They do. But I think Burrow's going to be fine. Don't be overconfident in your new offensive line. I know you like your new toys, but you're a little bit overconfident. Hadn't quite got the reps in he needed. He's a big timing route guy. I think they're going to be okay. I did not know he had 4 interceptions in that game, and they were still in it with 7 sacks. And speaking of narratives, man, you hear all this Patrick Mahomes. This is a down year for the Chiefs. I picked the Chiefs to win the division, okay? And I didn't think they would play this well. But, Tyreek Hill's out. You're bringing in guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, former Pittsburgh's first game. Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, like I just said, from Green Bay. You're on the road. Arizona, it's dynamite early in the year. They're almost as good as Miami down there, right? So you go there, Arizona, beat these guys. I want to say it was like 45-21 type of score. 44-21, 30 of 39, 360, a 144 quarterback rating. 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. Mahomes, he used his running backs. 6 catches by Juju Smith-Schuster. He checked down to his running backs. He uses Mr. Reliable tight end, Travis Kelce. Defense had a cornerback and had no problems there. The flip side, not to overreact, Rondale Moore. He was a late scratch for Arizona. Zach Ertz was a barely playing. He was a late add. He had 2 catches, 12 yards. He's paying their tight end, which is a really good player. He's playing in about 40%, Zach Ertz. Hopkins, DeAndre Hopkins, their leading receiver, is going to be suspended for 6 games. I thought they would play better than what they did. They had Hollywood Brown in that game. And and they did not have a regular offensive linebacker, although he didn't throw any interceptions in that game. Kyler Murray, he got his money. Now that money doesn't count against the cap. Like I said, next year, they've got this year and next year to make a big push. Arizona. They've got this year and next year to make that big push. And if they don't, his cap hits $50 million. It's going to go way up there. But I'm not ready to write them off. But when you got them kind of injuries like that, it's really hard to, especially with a young player like this, to get any kind of cohesion. Going back to Green Bay, the leading receiver for Green Bay on Sunday was A.J. Dillon, 5 catches, 46 yards. And that's your running back, your oversized running back. Tanyan, Robert, 3-6 for 36. And that was for Aaron Rodgers, So when you read through these injury reports, mainly it was the offensive line that was my concern because I thought Bakhtiari was going to come back, and they said, no, not quite ready. Then you got Eldon Jenkins. You're right. I mean, that's 2 offensive linemen right there that you're expecting to play and not play, and the fact that they've lost there before. So now you're taking a much younger guy and adding new pieces in a Kyler Murray, and then you go into playing one of the best September coaches in the league is Andy Reid, because Reid will experiment with stuff he does all summer. He works on new plays, schemes, little jet sweeps. Miko Hartman Pickles had a touchdown. That's the guy I was telling you all about that was supposed to replace. He was originally supposed to replace Tyreek Hill. He was supposed to replace Tyreek Hill when Hill had those domestic allegations. And there was a feel that he may be suspended for a long period of time. And he ended up not getting suspended for that. The team ended up keeping him, and they go on to win a Super Bowl. The rest is history. But I was one of the first to tell you it's not going to be that big a deal. People think a lot of and I know Hill had a good game, and I'll get into that game tomorrow, but it was really about that offensive line. That line, this is the good news if you're a Kansas City Chief fan. Guys like Tyler Smith, Creed Humphrey, Orlando Brown, those are all second-year guys into the system. Humphrey's a second-year player. Orlando Brown used to play with Baltimore. Remember last year, they made a trade to bring in Orlando Brown. And what you want us for an offensive line is you want these guys to play together continuously for a number of years. That is one of the few positions not named quarterback that I give a big contract to later in their year, in their career, like 30 plus. There was a guy named Brandon Sharif they used to play really good blocking guard, used to play with Washington, and he played his old team, and he was getting a lot of push there. Jacksonville should have won that game. ETN, remember, he got hurt in preseason. He dropped a wide open touchdown. He was too open, guy. He was so open that he dropped the ball. And you're going to get a lot of that. When you're dealing with these new players, it's touch on the ball. There's regular speed, then there's games. It's hard. My dad told me this. It's really hard to emulate game speed. It's hard to do that in practice, especially in football. It's just really hard. So I expect a lot of bounce back weeks this week. And like I said, I was really overly impressed with what Kansas City did. But really, his main guy is Kels on that team. And that offensive line, like I said, that Tyler Smith was a 6th-round pick for Kansas City. Totally rebuilt their offensive line. So the future is really sharp. If you're a Kansas City Chief fan, you're thinking about losing guys like Tyreek Hill, going through defensive play. They lost Tyrann Mathieu He now plays with the Saints, one of their big defensive players, defensive back. Had a starting rookie corner there. I thought Hollywood Brown would destroy this guy. The Brown got 1 touchdown. But their defensive coordinator did a really good job having them ready to play. I don't know if they're going to play that well every week. I think the Chargers are going to give them a lot of flack. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 2 touchdowns. Yeah, it's like these guys are watching the film that we're watching, Pickles. And it finally dawned on Andy Reid to sit Patrick Mahomes down and say, we have to. He's like a great driver, right? In golf. Yeah, you should tell me, you drive for dough, drive for show, you putt for dough. Well, using your running backs and checking to a running play, that may be your best play, or just a drop down to your, and Brady's perfect at this. Drop that pass down to your running back. And a lot of that was, I want to say that Edwards-Helaire caught those 2 touchdown passes. You know, I want to say he caught those 2 touchdown passes. And sometimes the short pass is the hardest one to make because it's so easy. Young quarterbacks, their eyes get big. They want to make the big play downfield rather than make the right play. It's just a simple little dump pass. And, it was a heck of a game. I know it was just 1 game, but the fact you got all those moving pieces there in Kansas City, but you got the right pieces that are in place. That offensive line, that head coach, that quarterback. And check this out. We've got a who was the most surprised you were in week 1? Probably the fact that the Bears the Giants beating the Titans was pretty surprising, but the Bears beating the 49ers like that. Now, it was a monsoon. The 49ers defense is really good, and Kyle Shanahan is a clever coach, is a very much clever coach. They should have beat them. The 49ers should have won that game like 17-0. Something about Patrick Mahomes. This is Sean Payton, who will be coaching, and it might be coaching the Cowboys, but if the Chargers don't make the playoffs and go far, he's going to be coaching LA. I would take the Chargers job. But this is Sean Payton talking to Colin Cowherd today about very much that Patrick Mahomes I was just talking about.
There's no argument. I remember doing him in college.
Texas Tech.
You liked him in college?
Yeah, we watched the tape. We watched all the tape, obviously in a tougher setting there for him because he doesn't have the personnel some of these other teams did. And then after that, we send him 2 days of installation for like a playbook install.
Sure.
Study it. We're going to be in Lubbock tomorrow. We'll meet with you. Met with Cliff briefly, took him into a room, spent half a day, and he was outstanding. Then we go out on the field. We throw, we work out. It's windy down there. If you're throwing well in Lubbock, you can probably throw well in a lot of places, right? I mean, it's windy.
Okay, now, if they would have got Patrick Mahomes, that was Sean Payton. Now, he's retired for a year, in air quotes, from the Saints. If they would have found a way to get Patrick Mahomes instead of Andy Reid, he's not telling that story. He's preparing for the next week, and he's probably got a ring, possibly 2 in his pocket. And that goes back to what I just said about the salary cap. If Drew Brees did not want all the money, I know he's got a big family, yada, I get all that. But he's way up there towards the end. He's way up at that 12.6%. That's another reason why Sean Payton only has 1 ring. And you got a guy like Mickey Loomis, that general manager down there, is hitting home run after home run after home run with draft picks. And it's funny, like that one great player can totally change everything for you. Andy Reid would be considered one of the most overrated coaches of all time if he didn't have Patrick Mahomes. I mean, 3 NFC championship games, could not win with Donovan McNabb, could not win nothing with Alex Smith, could not win with those other quarterbacks in Philadelphia. Already been fired from Philadelphia. Already getting heavily criticized at Kansas City. But he gets Patrick Mahomes. He gets the 2 Super Bowls. And there's people saying, you know, maybe he is one of the better coaches of all time. Speaking of players, there's a long story out about Steph Curry. And it's a preview, but I've read enough excerpts from it. I know I'm switching sports here, Corey. If you're still watching, going to NBA, he did an interview with Rolling Stone, and the interviewer asked him, said, would you welcome Kevin Durant back? He said, first of all, we were in the trap. He made it look like that they had asked him whether he wanted Kevin Durant to come back or not. And he says, with open arms, he says that Durant is slated as misunderstood and certain things happen in his life where he has problems trusting people. I totally understand that. I totally get that. You know, and I read through this, the little, you know, quotes here when he said that about Kevin Durant, and it made me think about Derek Jeter with Steph Curry. Now, Curry, like a Jeter, can remain cool, calm, and collective around total chaos, total media scrutiny. Mind you, he had to deal with a guy like Draymond Green. Remember, Draymond Green was suspended in one game. He was suspended in that game 6. Did not make any issues about that. They lost, or at game 5 in 2016, that they lost to the Cavaliers. Draymond Green is on camera when Steve Kerr's doing an interview, blasting the music. Kerr has somebody to turn the music down so he can hear the reporter doing a one-on-one interview. Green goes back up and turns the music up. So Green is that one bully, one bad egg in some sorts in the locker room. But Curry's wise enough to know that this guy, with all the scoring that I'm doing, with all the scrutiny of me being compared by big personalities, your Stephen A's of the world, Stephen A. Smith, to Jordan, or not Jordan, but just the great shooters of all time, and me being baited into and asked the questions about whether why should I not want more money? Why should I always take the last shot? Why should I do the blah, 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 blah? See, it's a major distraction. Curry sees all this, like a Derek Jeter. It's a major distraction when Draymond Green gets into it with the referee, when Draymond Green gets into it with Kevin Durant. Think about it. Kevin Durant's the more talented player. But Curry sees Draymond Green as like a big-time blocking back. He's like the big fullback. And this guy is like a LaDainian Tomlinson. You know, he's like a Moose Johnson. Us Titans fan, he's like a Lorenzo Neal for an Eddie George. You know, and that was like Derek Jeter. Jeter snapped at David Wells one time for calling out the infield because they all dropped an infield ball, and he put his hands up. Derek Jeter did that. There's a captain documentary called The Captain. We know that Jeter's not the most talented player. He's not the most talented player on his team. The most talented player was probably A-Rod. You know, most talented pitcher, greatest closer of all time was Mariano Rivera. But Jeter, he enjoyed winning so much, and he knew how to hide behind them. And he welcomed David Wells back to David Wells left and came back. He welcomed him back. And it takes a tremendous amount of leadership and maturity to see past a player's shortcomings for the bigger picture. And that's what Steph Curry did with Draymond Green. And the fact that, and on the other side, you know about Kevin Durant. See, he already won a ring before Durant got there. They lost to the Cavaliers. And then he won one when he got back. So why wouldn't he want Kevin Durant back with open arms? And he says, hey, he don't have a problem trusting anybody. He has a problem. So for him to say that, he's a pretty honest guy, and he knows how to stay even keel through intense times. He was there the whole time when there was intensity between Durant and Draymond Green, and they played well in those games. During all that friction, like a Jeter, think about it. You've won 3 World Series at the biggest media market in the world. And every move you are in a microscope. Derek Jeter had a fallout with the owner, which most players, that would have got them out of town, having a fallout with George Steinbrenner. He was hiring Pickles. Wasn't he hiring private investigators to keep an eye on Reggie Jackson? So there was a story out about Jeter having too much nightlife time in the public eye. Instead of blowing up and demanding to be traded at Steinbrenner for micromanaging him, they make light of it. They even done a really famous Visa commercial for it and laughed it off. But that's how Curry, it's hard to keep that even keel with all that friction. It's really hard. There's a level of leadership. Both of them have really good parents, good background to oversee that, especially at that young age, all that money, all that pressure. Remember, Dennis Rodman once said, the basketball part's easy. It's this part right here in the locker room, dealing with you all and the stories in my life. This is the hard part. That's what Rodman said. And guys like Steph Curry, and I'm sure it's going to come out in this Rolling Stone interview, this was only part of it. I think it's coming out next month. It was written in the preseason. And there was like a 5 or 6 part documentary on Derek Jeter. These guys, they run hand to hand. They can get in and out of big time pressure situations, and they are cool as the other side of the pillow. And you need more guys like that. Neither one's considered the best talented. They've had great moments. Jeter getting out Jason Giambi at the plate. Big hits late in the game. Way better average in the playoffs than A-Rod ever wished to have. And we all know about Curry, the big threes he hit. His free throws when the money's on the line. And he still acts like it's a pickup game. But a lot of it is not just that. It's the intangibles and the off the court. And it's at a certain level. Not everybody's a leader. There's so much lack of leadership. I thought Magic Johnson had that, and all three of those players, Magic Johnson, Derek Jeter, Steph Curry, are criticized and called overrated by their peers because those guys are so cool that they rub people as being phonies by some critics who are, like I said before, are simply envious of that. Yeah, big shot Billups. So, guys, I thought I wouldn't have an hour, and I'm an hour and 3 into this. Tomorrow, I'm looking to have Dallas Cowboy Jim Jeffcoat. I'm not sure at what time he's going to be on. I'll be back on around 7 p.m. Central Time. A lot of college football to get into tomorrow. I want to finish up in the NFL tomorrow. I want to get into that Baker Mayfield, Carolina Panthers. We'll get into that game a little bit more, talk a little bit about that, talk a little bit of the college game and whatnot. And if you guys like the show, share the show. If not, I will see you tomorrow, same time, same place, around 7 p.m. Central Time here on Sports Scope.